Hello everyone, this will be the 8th chapter of The Growing Pains of Child Soldiers by Bloodwolf 13, read by Insect Overlord. This chapter is titled 1 Week, Part 1. Saturday, 12 days after the reveal, Marinette's birthday. When Marinette was little, her birthday was one of the best parts of the year. Her family was always surprising her with great parties, and it was a day that she could play/enjoy with her classmates and friends. They had often lasted for hours on end and were full of laughter and love. Marinette's 15th birthday party was on a Saturday. It was mostly a sunny day. Her parents booked a room in an arcade. It was an imitation of the old-fashioned ones with a twist. On one side of the room, there were older games. On the other, there were new games and consoles. It was amazing they had a mix of old games and new games. The classics like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Galaga, and Donkey Kong were packed. The newer games like Ultimate Mega-Strike 3 and Mario Kart were personal favorites of hers. There was also dance games and shooting games. She destroyed her family and friends in almost all of the newer games, setting an all-time high score on Mario Kart and UMS 3. She had her picture taken and put on the Wall of Fame. Around mid-afternoon, her grandma beat every single person in a Dance Revolution game and joined Marinette on the Wall of Fame. Her friends were shocked. The cake and sweets her parents had prepared for the day were perfect. All her friends, from her class and outside of it, showed up and they stayed until the place was closing. Even Adrian and Kagami, who couldn't stay for long, were there for a few hours. It was one of the best birthdays of her life, and came very close to being the most perfect birthday of her life. Nevertheless, it was the second year of her being Ladybug. On the first birthday after she became Ladybug, she didn't even think about Akumas or being akumatized. Then her grandma had been akumatized. It was a lousy thing to have to fight a family member that got akumatized at the idea of you growing up. That meant that this year she was on the lookout for possible exits in case of an Akuma, which hopefully wouldn't come from her party. And she had also prepared a list of excuses to run in case of the Akuma. The entirety of her 15th birthday party was a nerve-wracking affair. Occasionally, she would lose herself in the games and the fun, but every so often there was some type of sound that would trigger a reaction out of her. A game being too loud, some kid screaming, a phone beeping. The simplest things would make her tense and worry. This was aggravated by the incredible level of stress that she had suffered in the last 2 weeks. She just couldn't relax. It was like someone had pushed a button inside of her and no one was able to turn it off. No amount of sense or rational thinking could calm her down. Marinette's levels of paranoia were at an all-time high. The mere reference to the heroes had her wishing to go back home and hide in her room. Every time her parents would make a comment about the news and the superheroes' ages, a sad expression would appear on their faces and would haunt Marinette's nightmares. The level of guilt she had had was at an all-time high. It seemed everything in Marinette's life was at an all-time high. Yesterday, the police department had informed the public that the heroes had already approached them and talked about the new conditions. The statement wasn't as empty as the previous ones, and had a little bite with the phrasing. Marinette's personal favorite was, "Regretfully, the heroes aren't going to stop patrolling, but the police have persuaded them to reduce their hours significantly and talk with any patrolling officer." They hadn't lied, per se. They were going to reduce patrols, and they were going to talk to officers on the street, but only one of those was an actual advice from the police. It was amazing the way they had changed some aspects of what had happened in that meeting. They were trying to show even more results with the public than the ones they got. Marinette was sure if she hadn't told the police and the public they would issue a statement after the meeting, it would be even worse. The chief commissioner would probably modify what the heroes said. She was starting to think that recording the meeting wasn't just to help the local cops. It also tied the hands of the higher-ups of the Parisian police department. At least it would tie the hands of the ones that were looking for a way to use this for personal or political gain. They couldn't change their versions too much if there was a chance the video from the meeting could leak. The chief commissioner had actually tried to throw Lieutenant Roger and Captain Proust under the bus by saying their names on the press release, which was pretty dangerous considering Hawkmoth may try to akumatize them. Captain Proust had a brilliant response to that, saying, "Ladybug and Cat Noir just chose to come to the people who fight alongside them in the field. They came to this station because they know several cops from the Akuma fights and trust them. Meaning, we fight along with them every day and try to help them any way we can. You only appear if there's a political crisis. Why would you think that they would go to you? She and Cat Noir had both decided that the choice of going to the station was an act of pure genius, especially because the police department decided to inform the public that Ladybug and Cat Noir had rejected the offer for therapy. That's not a bad thing, but the way they phrased it, it seemed to them and a lot of people like they were saying Ladybug and Cat Noir were ungrateful for rejecting their help, and maybe the offer wasn't something they should keep open. The public was not happy. Immediately, loud groups of people started going on rants about pressuring teenagers into going to therapy was not the way to go. That threatening kids into going to therapy was dangerous and could backfire. It's true that some people need therapy and refuse, but usually the state or a therapist intervenes. It's not through blackmail that people go to therapy. It also didn't help that most people could see that some of the commissioners and chief of police department weren't happy that the heroes chose somewhere other than the headquarters. It raised questions on why the chief commissioner was so displeased with the lower forces being of service to the heroes of Paris. It turned into a debate on elites and the police force and took away the focus from them. Marinette felt both relieved and guilty by the public focus shift because of the cops that had helped them. Ultimately, she just decided this was a pretty important issue that needed to be discussed. Journalists and commentators both agreed on how Ladybug and Cat Noir made a smart move. It both gained respect from the cops of Paris by choosing cops that fought with them, and the citizens of Paris by accepting the help offered. They also were open to working with the police by talking with officers on the streets when they were patrolling. There was some debate if the heroes should have a more direct line of communication to the police, but in the end, no one could agree on a plan. On one hand, some argued in favor of Ladybug and Cat Noir going to the headquarters of the police every time they went to patrol. Several people pointed out it was a bad plan. Not only would it take time and leave the heroes feeling more tired, Hawkmoth would probably take advantage of this. On the other hand, people were arguing that the heroes were not compelled to work with the police. Also, making them have to report to the police was going dangerously into the child soldiers' territory that everyone was trying to avoid. A lot of the people pointed out that if the heroes would select random cops while patrolling, Hawkmoth would have no one to go after. Plus, they had already shown they preferred to work with cops who were on the streets. The police had told the public the heroes were reluctant to share information over the Hawkmoth investigation. A journalist, one that didn't get an answer in the police conference, pointed out that the heroes were actually smart in doing so. Not only did it prevent information from falling into the wrong hands, it also made sure that the magical aspect of the Miraculous wouldn't attract even more dangerous individuals. The only people who came out better in the second statement were the politicians. Mayor Bourgeois had told the press that the police should go easy on the heroes. They were young and shouldn't be pressured by the police into doing things they didn't want to. It was a political move. He played the concerned father figure. Chloe, being his daughter, actually helped him not sound too condescending, and agreed with the public. Marinette actually started to realize how the man had survived so many political scandals. He wasn't the only one. Several politicians had the same opinion, and the public liked that. The heroes were back to being a political gold, even if now it had to be handled more carefully. The police department had stated that they wouldn't release any more statements until the heroes had the opportunity to speak, confirming that Ladybug and Cat Noir would indeed be making a statement soon enough and protecting them from negative press. There were also talks about doing a demonstration, or a protest, against Hawkmoth and Mayura next Saturday. Marinette was feeling extremely conflicted about this. On one hand, she fully supported the anger of the people of Paris towards their supervillains. On the other hand, she had a pretty good idea that someone was probably getting akumatized. That much anger and hate being released sounded like Hawkmoth's dream come true. The only positive thing was that it would be exclusively against him. He would need to be very careful about who he akumatized. On the plus side, that would be hilarious, seeing Hawkmoth fighting one of his akumas. Marinette chuckles out loud at the thought, and Alia looks at her in annoyance. Girl, I know you're some kind of video game wizard, but you don't need to laugh at me losing. Not all of us have your playing ability. Alia nudges her arm and winks. Still, I'll let it go for today. You are finally turning 15. Marinette smiles brightly. This has been an epic birthday. Even better than last year since I didn't have to run from an Akuma. I actually think that was more cool. I mean, it sucks having Akumas at birthday parties, but you got to see Ladybug and Cat Noir. That's always a plus in my book. Marinette laughs. Speaking of Ladybug, now no one can tease me of being the only person in class that's 14 years old. Besides, you're all at her 15th birthday party. She thinks but doesn't add. Sometimes the irony is hilarious. Alia chuckles and grabs a controller for Mario Kart. Well, next year we can still tease you for 2 weeks. Too bad we don't know when her birthday is. Marinette bites the inside of her cheek to stop from laughing. It was a running gag in her party that she was finally older than Ladybug. It took all she had not to burst out laughing every time someone decided to tell a joke or make a pun about it. It was the first time in 2 weeks that she was able to laugh at the problem. In that respect, Tiki and Master Fu were right. By giving time and space to the citizens of Paris, things were starting to normalize. Sure, there was still a lot of debates, but a lot of people had progressed to the acceptance phase of this thing. Sure, now pick a character. I'm going to teach you how to win in Mario Kart. Alia just sighs and finishes a lap behind Marinette, cursing shells. Alia calls Max to help her defeat Marinette, and Adrian offers to be on Marinette's team. They destroy Max and Alia. Adrian smiles at her. We make a good team, Marinette. Ah, perfect team. I mean, us good players. An employer shows up from behind them. Kids, I don't know how you're doing this, but you broke another record. Come on, birthday girl, you know the drill. He looks at Adrian. You too, kid. She and Adrian end up taking a photo for the Wall of Fame. Alia got her a copy of the photograph and winked at her. I think we broke a record for how many records were broken before. Adrian chuckles. I get what you're trying to say. You've dominated the console games. Nino shows up and puts an arm around Alia. Dude, you broke the record for Galaga and Donkey Kong. You and Marinette spent the day destroying records. Max set the record for Mrs. Pac-Man and 2 shooting games, and let's not forget about Marinette's grandmother. They all laugh. Alia pulls out her phone. I recorded your grandma. She's got moves. Nino chuckles. And your mom and dad are also kicking everyone's butts in Ultimate Mega Strike 3. By the way, I think your mom just took a 2nd place on the Wall of Records. My parents are going to join the multiplayer of the Ultimate Mega Strike 3. You're not playing? Adrian asks. I won a tournament already. It feels a bit unfair. Adrian smiles at her and her heart skips a beat. Max shows up behind them holding a piece of cake. An employer told me they have a gaming competition every 2 months. If we form a team, we can enter the tournament in 3 weeks. Marinette's eyes light up. 3 hours later, and the party was over. Everybody was sent home with enough sweets to put Halloween night to shame. All the employees at the arcade were also given a bag full of Dupan Chang bakery goods, leaving them happy. A few went out of their way to make sure that she knew that they wanted a rematch, not only with her, but her entire family. Her parents were also introduced into the Wall of Fame in the 2-player mode of the Ultimate Mecha Strike 3. It was a nice way to end her birthday. Did you like your birthday party? Her dad asks. He always asks, afraid she was unhappy or displeased in any way. Marinette thinks it's ridiculous. Her birthday parties are perfect. Even with her grandma getting akumatized last year, it was still an amazing one. This one had no akumas, making it even better. Speaking of akumas, there were 2 akumas on Thursday and Friday, 2 teleporting akumas, and she needed a break on her birthday. Technically, it was the same akuma that got akumatized for the same reason. They missed the bus. The second time it actually took less than 10 minutes to defeat, but it still counted as a battle. Hawkmoth was on a streak of teleporting akumas, and it was annoying. But at least it wasn't mind-controlling akumas. There was nothing worse than a mind-controlling akuma. The out-of-control rage, the chaos they called, the way they moved, often hurting themselves and didn't stop, couldn't stop. They never remembered. It was the only positive thing that came out of the horrifying experience. Some days, when she finds out the akuma is a brainwashing type, she wants to run. Run from the fight, run from her duties, run from her family and her friends. Just wants to get as far from Paris as humanly possible. It makes her feel like the world's biggest coward. "Net?" her mom calls out. "What? Sorry, I spaced out for a moment." Marinette can't help but notice that her mother looks at her for a lot longer than her dad. It's like her mom knows something is up, and was deciding if it was the time to bring it up or not. Her parents look at her with concern. "I asked you if you had a good time at the party." She smiles. It was perfect. After the last couple weeks, it was more than perfect. Her friends were all there. Adrian was there, her parents and grandparents. She had fun, doing one of her favorite things in the world. It was all she needed. Her parents gave her a massive grin. "We're really happy, honey." Her grandmother looks at her. "I'm just disappointed that we didn't dance together, Marinetta." "I'm not great with dancing games. Maybe next time?" Her grandma gives her a beautiful smile. Her dad laughs. "Besides, if we broke any more records, I don't think they would allow us to come back. Between us and Marinette's friends, we must have broken close to 10 records. Dad, they actually told me that if we came back, we should do a rematch with them. All of us." They laugh while her mom opens the door to their home. "They told us about tournaments. They do them every 2 months. There's one in a few weeks. Max wants to form a team with me and Adrian." "Are you going to do it?" her mom asks. "We need 4 people to form a team for the next one. Adrian wasn't sure if he was free, so we're thinking about it." Her parents nod. "Does anyone want dinner?" her mom asks. They all groan. "Mom, no more food, please." The rest of the night was tame compared to her day. Her parents were obviously exhausted and they had to get up early. Her grandmother was also suffering from some type of jet lag, even if she would deny it. So, around 9 p.m., Marinette started to yawn a lot and was convinced to call it a night. She didn't even steal any cookies to bring to Tiki. Her Kwame had spent the day eating sweets. Can Kwames get fat? How would that even work? "I think this birthday was a lot better than the last," Tiki said. "Absolutely. No family members akumatized. I had a really good time, and you ate your weight in sweets." She tickles Tiki's belly. Her Kwame laughs happily. "I'm glad you had fun, Marinette. After the last few days, you deserve it." "Yeah, it was a great birthday." She feels deeply happy in a way she hasn't in a while, and for the first time in weeks, she falls asleep with a smile on her face. Sunday, 13 days after the reveal. Akuma attack. This year, she has been spared of fighting a birthday Akuma, so of course, the day after her birthday, there is an Akuma attack. After all, Hawkmoth couldn't take a few more days off. There were people to akumatize. They almost made it 2 full days, but someone got angry at the end of the night and, well, Akuma. Fun fact, she fights fewer Akumas on Sundays than she fights on most Mondays. Yet, here she was on a Sunday. The Akuma she has been fighting is a gym rat that got angry at being kicked out of the gym 2 hours after closing time. It happens sometimes. People that get akumatized by being absolute dicks to others and then blaming the harmless person for their own selfish decisions. It was pretty rare, mostly because they usually just made angry Akumas that were pretty rash and not smart at all. The most dangerous Akumas were the ones that got wronged by someone. Those who got betrayed, hurt, and wronged made the worst possible Akumas. The better the person is, the more powerful the Akuma they become. Plus, the more emotional a person is during their akumatization, the more powerful the Akuma. Marinette thinks that's why Hawkmoth keeps akumatizing teenagers and children. They're the ones who can get extremely emotional over small things. While they don't make the smartest Akumas, Giganteon here is looking at you, they make some of the more powerful Akumas. This one was strong, no doubt about it, yet he was an idiot. He had the power to pick any object up, a tree, a rock, a feather, and throw it at them, hard enough to leave massive dents in metal. It was extremely dangerous to get hit by anything that he could throw. Even so, the Akuma had chosen to stop, pick up one object, and throw it at them. They have superhuman reflexes. Normally, they would destroy this Akuma in record time, but he got akumatized in a really busy street, right next to a mall and a few buildings. It meant thousands of people needed to be evacuated and were serving as target practice for the Akuma. While Marinette was sure she would survive getting hit by him, it would hurt. The civilians didn't have that guarantee. When she watched him throw bread hard enough to overturn a car, she knew that he could easily destroy the walls of the buildings, that people weren't safe in the buildings that they had originally taken refuge in when the Akuma appeared. One hit would be enough to kill a person, or a few dozen, depending on what he hit. The police had appeared, and Cat Noir had told them to take everyone out of the buildings, that it wasn't safe. The cops were helping the civilians, but they also made themselves targets. It was a double-edged blade. It reminded Marinette of telling the cops that most Akumas were hard to contain no matter what. It also didn't help that the news media helicopters were pointing shiny lights at them, making them even more visible. The battle had gone on for about an hour now, and there were people still coming out of the buildings. On the plus side, most buildings were now empty, meaning any time she would be able to call Lucky Charm and end this once and for all. At least this Akuma wasn't on her birthday. It would only be a matter of time before she could defeat it. Not bad for her first Akuma after turning 15. Or so she thought. What she didn't know was that a 7-year-old boy had gotten lost in the crowd and decided to go up on a roof to watch the fight. It was bad because no one knew he was there. It got worse when the kid watching the heroes of Paris fight a villain started to scream at the top of his lungs. "Kick his stinky butt, Ladybug, Cat Noir." Ladybug froze when she heard the voice. "Why, you little..." roared the Akuma. He picked up a park bench, where did that come from, and aims it at the kid. Cat was at the other side of the street, too far from the kid, but she wasn't. She runs at full speed towards the little boy, not knowing if she can even get there in time. The thought of watching a kid get eviscerated by an Akuma makes her sick to her stomach. There isn't a chance in hell that the kid would walk out of that without some serious issues. He wouldn't remember it, but the footage from the helicopters above would be bad enough. She lands near the boy just as the Akuma throws the park bench, and she knows that one of them is going to get hit. Marinette doesn't even think about it. She just pushes the kid out of the way and gets hit by the park bench on the right side of her body. She goes flying out of the building to the other side of the street and hits the ground hard enough to make a crater in the ground. Everything hurts and her vision goes white. For a couple seconds, Marinette actually thinks that she's going to pass out, and then the pain settles in. It's excruciating. It takes everything in her not to scream out loud. The right side of her body feels like it's on fire, and at the same time, like it's just been crushed. If not for the suit, every single bone in her right side of her body would have been shattered by the sheer force of that hit. Even with the suit, Marinette thinks that she might have, at least, a few cracked bones on her right side. She's not sure how that could even be possible. As Ladybug, she rarely gets hit hard enough to get seriously hurt. The suit protects them too well, and helps with the pain if they get hit. Her body is still throbbing with pain. It's diminished by the second, but she's still left reeling from the hit. Getting up slowly to her elbows, she looks around the street and freezes. Dozens of cops and civilians are looking at her with terrified eyes. The street hasn't even been evacuated. The helicopter light is on her, making her stand out even more. Panic and fear strike her hard and fast. She starts to get up, even though she feels dizzy and nauseated, like she might throw up her dinner. The pain disappears almost immediately, like magic or an ungodly amount of adrenaline. Ladybug can't have people panicking about her. The last time this happened, it was Heroes Day. Vulpina's illusion was a killer for them. They almost lost that day. It was disastrous. She has to get up. She gets up because she doesn't have any choice. She gets up because she hasn't saved Paris yet. She gets up because Cat Noir must be worried, scared, terrified. She gets up because if she doesn't, this is the end, and what other choice does she truly have? The pain is still there, but the magic is making it easier to deal with. The entire street looks relieved to see her get up. A few of them still look terrified for her, but they don't say anything. A blood-curdling scream is heard and everyone turns to the source. Ladybug! Cat Noir shows up looking completely out of his mind. The suits are resistant, but that doesn't mean they can't get hit hard enough to hurt them. Cat must be panicking like crazy. "I'm good," she shouts back. She can't see him, but she can almost feel him breathing out in relief. The people on the street also breathe out in relief. She tries not to feel like a liar. It doesn't work. She rejoins the battle after that. The street they'd originally been on had been evacuated, which meant they didn't have to worry about civilians. It only takes a lucky charm to defeat the Akuma. The miraculous cure passes over her ribs and she can breathe again without the numb pressure. Cat also gets the cure on his knees, and almost instantly Marinette knows that he got hit after her. It's probably the reason he didn't immediately appear by her side. A bittersweet smile is shared between them when they pound their fists together. She reassures the victim after the fight. A bit of a task since the man is a bit self-centered, but doable. Cat Noir takes over for her when her earrings give the 2-minute warning. Cat also tells her he got the boy to a police officer, so before she leaves, she de-transforms in a public WC and lets Tiki recharge before re-transforming. She finds an officer quickly. The officer notices her and frowns. "Ladybug, you're still here?" She smiles. "Yeah, I just wanted to know if Cat gave a small boy to an officer, and I wanted to know if he was all right." "The boy you saved?" She nods. He reaches for his radio and asks for information. He looks up at her and frowns again. "Are you all right? You got hit back there." "I'm fine. The suits are really tough, and the miraculous cure would heal any injuries I might have. I'm just a little tired." The cop gives her a smile. "I'm not surprised. It's after midnight. Do you, have school in the morning?" She groans. "Yup, it's gonna suck," she answers honestly. The officer is doing her a favor, and it's pretty obvious that she's still in school, even if the Parisians don't know what grade. The cop gives her an understanding look, but before he can say anything, the radio comes to life. They found the boy's parents, and he's safe. She lets out a sigh of relief. "My lady, you're still here?" She turns to see Cat. "Yeah, I was just seeing if the police had any news on the boy." He smiles at her. "How's the little man?" She returns the smile and tells him about the boy. Most of the officers are close to them, but giving them space. A new cop arrives on the scene and gives her a cup and Cat Noir a bag of chips. "Here's a cup of chamomile tea and some chips. Lieutenant Raincomprey said you might need it." She blushes a little. Cat outing her coffee addiction has a weird side effect of the cops in the station giving her tea and trying to give Cat food. They aren't sure how to deal with it yet. "Thank you." Marinette takes the tea and basically inhales it. The cop stares at her and she goes red. The officer smiles at her. "That should help you sleep. Chamomile is great for relaxing." "Thank you," she repeats. "I'm going home now. Hopefully She trails off, watching Cat inhale his bag of chips. He notices then and turns red. "Want some?" She looks at him in amusement. "No, I'm good, kitty." "Do you want some more?" She and Cat both turn down the officer and tell the police they don't need to keep giving her and Cat food. The cops just look amused by this and promise them to keep the snacks for only special fights. Marinette has no idea if that's a joke or not, but they both leave in a good mood. When they leave, the entire police force watches them go. A few cops stare at them with concerned looks and heavy hearts. This concludes Chapter 8 of The Growing Pains of Child Soldiers by Bloodwolf 13. I hope you enjoyed this one. This was one of my favorite chapters from when I first read it. Sorry if you heard some banging in the background towards the end. My dad started doing some construction. I tried to cut out the louder bits, but you might still have heard. Anyways, the next part should be up soon. Thank you so much for listening.